We can start recording. Thanks, everyone. Glad you all are here. I'm just going to look at my agenda here to keep on track. So we're here for a meeting tonight, and we're going to jump right in, and we'll talk through the meeting minutes. I think we're all familiar with sort of Zoom protocol, so I won't go over that again, but if you have any questions, let me know. So the meeting minutes were in the packet, and can I get someone to make a motion to approve the minutes, or was there any feedback before we do that? Let me go backwards. Any feedback on the minutes? Any concerns with anything that was in the meeting minutes from the last meeting? Okay, don't see any. So can we someone make a motion to approve the minutes?
I move we approve the minutes.
Thank you, Warren. Can I get a second?
Second.
All right, thank you, John and Michael. Great, so the meeting minutes have been approved. All right, so we'll move right into a quick update for myself, and then we're going to hear from Kate. Today we're also going to go through the RMI Accelerator update, which I'm really excited about. So we want to leave plenty of time for that and for feedback from everyone once we hear from Kate and Gary and Alice. But in terms of the director's update, I just wanted to share a few things. Kate and I got confirmation from the light plant just the other day that they have confirmed that they can come to the December CAB meeting, which is really exciting to talk about their decarbonization strategy. So just wanted to let everyone know that. I know we've been talking about that for a little while now, so it'll give us an opportunity to hear and learn all the great things that the light plan is doing and planning to continue to do. And will be some opportunities for us to ask some questions and learn more. So we will plan on that as one of our key elements for the next agenda. We talked the last time a little bit about membership and the need to supplement membership. So we're working through that process. We've looked at the couple of candidates who've submitted green cards and hoping to have some additional members to fill in, hopefully before the next meeting, but we'll just have to work through the process on that. Another quick update, I touched base with Doug Sharp and Brad Hubbard Nelson from CSEC a week or so ago, a couple weeks ago, because they're in the process of kind of doing their own strategic planning as well and talking through what they want to prioritize for the coming year. And they're still in the process of working through that. But one of the projects that they had talked about and I think aligned on going forward was figuring out how they could help support transition of homes from heating oil to ideally going straight to electrification. And Brad shared, I thought this was, I didn't realize there were that many homes in town that they're using heating oil today. He said there's about 2,500 homes, he thinks, based on the assessor's data. And so like if they could get 250 homes transitioned a year, which is pretty aggressive, it still would take 10 years to move through that. So they're just trying to think through how they can support that and work with the light plan on a strategic outreach to homeowners to try and help educate them about opportunities for electrification and hopefully kind of leapfrog any folks converting over to gas. So they also mentioned that there may be an opportunity for anyone who's interested from CAB to help support that effort and get involved. So if folks are interested in kind of learning more or potentially getting involved in that, feel free to reach out to me and I can work to kind of connect you if you aren't already connected to Brad and Doug. And I think that was all I had as far as updates, unless there's questions on what I shared that anyone wants to bring up. Michael, I think you're on mute.
And I think Kate maybe had mentioned it at the last meeting, but also in terms of the initiative that CSAC is looking at for transitioning homes, residential homes to all electric, is that the light plant also has these coaches that they are engaging with now. And maybe there's an opportunity to somehow link what CSAC is doing and potentially with CMLP, or it could be too complicated and, through two different pathways could continue. I'd mentioned that to Brad and he was going to give it some thought.
Yeah, I know Brad mentioned what are they called? Heat pump coaches? Is that, yeah.
Yeah.
So he
Heat pump
mentioned that
coaches.
as a key partner, and I know he's been in touch with Jan at the light plant to kind of talk through the idea and get some feedback. And I think she was supportive overall. So I think it's still in the works. But Kate, was there anything that I said that was inaccurate there, or anything you'd sort of clarify?
No, that's right. I think,
Okay.
the light plant, for those folks who aren't aware, has just recently launched a heat pump coaching program. So it provides support to residents who want to make that transition to heat pumps and, are looking at a bunch of proposals from contractors and not sure, what the best fit is. So it's a really great resource that the light plan is providing now. And I think would be very complementary to CSAC promoting electrification, to also say, you can do it and there's a resource for you. So I think they'll go hand in hand pretty well.
Great. Any other questions? Okay, I will hand it over to Kate now for her update.
Great, thanks. Not too much this month. I went to 2 virtual conferences in the last month, which kept me busy here on Zoom, but exciting news to share around PACE, which we talked about last month briefly. The select board unanimously approved the resolution to opt into the state's PACE program, Property Assessed Clean Energy. The select board basically said, why wouldn't we do this? And the answer is there really is no reason why we wouldn't do this. It's a great resource for commercial properties in Concord. So they're very supportive. So we've officially opted into the program. So now any commercial properties in Concord can take advantage of PACE financing. So very, very pleased to share that with you all. And then the school committee recently approved a contract for a new Lion electric school bus. This was funded by the VW grant that we got last year. So that's really exciting. And that bus is expected to arrive early next year. And that will add to our current Lion electric school bus. And then just a continuing update on the library sustainability planning. I won't get into details now because towards the end of the agenda, I'm gonna give you a more detailed update on what's going on with the library corporation sustainability planning and get your feedback. So that's it for me. Any questions?
Did we buy 2 buses, or aren't we going to buy 2 buses? Is it one at a time?
So we got the VW grant last year just for 1 bus. But Ruthie, you're probably thinking of the town meeting article this year, which was the goal of that was to get the funding to support 2 buses in the next grant round for the VW settlement. So that would be an additional 2 down the line, but 1 right now.
Okay. So we own 1, we're buying another one, and hopefully we'll buy 2 more.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. Great. Thank you.
All right, great. Thanks, Kate. So I think we will head right over to our next agenda item, which is the RMI Accelerator update.
Great.
I'll turn it back over to Kate.
Yeah, so I'll just tee it up, and Gary's gonna kind of lead us through the discussion. But as you all know, a group of us from Concord have been participating in this accelerator program that Rocky Mountain Institute is running for cities and towns in Massachusetts to explore and move forward legal pathways for building electrification policies, especially given the decision by the Attorney General on the Brookline bylaw. So we've been working through this accelerator program and wanted to bring to you today an update on where we're at and see if CAB wants to move some of these initiatives forward. So I will let Gary take it away.
Great, thanks. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, great. Yeah, so as Kate described, this really stemmed from activities that we had developed as a sort of a group of citizens who had supported Article 40 on last year's town meeting warrant that wasn't moved. It really wasn't moved in wake of this decision by the Attorney General, who found that Brookline's I guess I don't know if it was a ban, it was a prohibition on natural gas infrastructure in the town of Brookline that had passed their town meeting and it had gone to the Attorney General for review. Unfortunately, the Attorney General, while she supported it notionally, found that it was inconsistent with a state preemption on effectively addressing residential or commercial building energy codes. The BBRS controls the state energy code. The state has a stretch energy code, which allows communities that opt in to go beyond the base energy code. We are a stretch energy code state, but even the stretch energy code doesn't really get you to net zero anywhere close to like a 2030, 2035 timeframe, which we would need to meet our state climate goals. So there is state legislation that is being proposed that would enhance the stretch energy code, that would make the stretch energy code essentially more aggressive and get to net zero energy levels, in 2030, 2035 timeframe. So as we were, realizing that we would not be able to follow the Brookline path and just adopt a Article 40 style, struggling around the word ban. I think we're not supposed to use the word ban. We're not trying to ban natural gas infrastructure, but it would have not allowed natural gas infrastructure in the town of Concord through essentially a general bylaw. As the Rocky Mountain Institute Building Electrification Accelerator Program was underway, we had this great opportunity for experts to help us deal with this problem that came about from the Attorney General's decision. In looking over and having legal expertise on their side, the Rocky Mountain Institute, who's not just trying to help the town of Concord, but a cohort of, I don't know, maybe Kate or Alice knows how many communities. I think it's something like 14 or 15 communities in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts who are all trying to move forward with building electrification strategies. They reviewed their legal options that were still available, and they came up with basically 5 different pathways that cities and towns could follow. And of the 5 pathways, there were really 3 that seemed like they were workable, feasible, and politically viable for the town of Concord. Thanks, Kate. Kate's showing us a slide from the Rocky Mountain Institute Accelerator Program showing the 5 strategies that they proposed. And I'm just going to focus on the first 3 here, because the first 3 really seemed like they would work for Concord. And the last 2, really, the Green Communities Act, well, we're already a green community and there are some opportunities there, but the Brookline style ordinance is for cities only, and as a town, not a city, wouldn't apply to us. But in terms of the first 3 that seem like they might move us forward, given the Attorney General's ruling, option number 3 is where I want to focus first, a local resolution to catalyze state legislation. As I mentioned, the state energy bills that are before the legislature right now do call for a more aggressive glide path for the stretch energy code. We're already a stretch energy community. So if we could, as a locality, issue a resolution to the state legislature, encouraging that legislation to pass, it's not a binding resolution, non-binding. It could be issued by the select board without town meeting action. So it seems like a low hurdle, a low barrier to entry, and it seemed like a great starting point. So we were very supportive of that option, and we think it would have added emphasis if the CAB were to basically take up that cause and bring it to the select board. While I think that the select board, might be inclined to support state legislation anyway, because, we do have Article 51, we need to achieve the Article 51 goals, and basically the state energy code is standing in our way. We think that having the CAB support a local resolution would make it that much more likely that the select board would be willing to basically draft a letter or draft a non-binding resolution to provide our legislature. Option number 2 on this list, a home rule petition, which I want to discuss next, is something Alice can, I think, speak to in more detail, but this would require town meeting. Home rule petition would basically require a town meeting vote that would request that the legislature vote, the entire state legislature vote, to give the town of Concord an exclusive right to regulate our own, essentially, establish our own either zoning or energy regulation. We have this state preemption that prevents towns from doing their own building energy codes. Through a home rule petition, we could ask the legislature to grant us that. That's a longer time frame. It would require going to town meeting. It requires, engaging the entire town of Concord in a dialogue and getting them to support, the request. It requires an act of the state legislature after that, and then it would require a subsequent town meeting vote to actually change our energy code or adopt a general bylaw or something if we were granted that home rule option. So that's a longer, higher hurdle, but we may pursue that, and I'm going to let Alice talk about that option after I finish. And then I just want to mention the third option that we think is right for Concord is to consider whether there are additional zoning incentives that might encourage building electrification. This would not be as draconian a step. It wouldn't be, a regulation. It wouldn't have the power of regulation or legislation. But we already have PRD, the Planned Residential Development, within our zoning bylaw that allows for certain developers that meet the PRD requirements to, increase density. And this past year at town meeting, we did strengthen the PRD zoning bylaw to basically allow for sustainability review as part of the PRD process. So while we've been struggling, I was formerly on the planning board and chair of the planning board, and I know at least while I was on the planning board, we struggled mightily with the requirements of what the PRD allows you to consider when weighing whether or not a particular development was considered a benefit to the town. Sustainability wasn't explicitly recognized in those criteria. Now we have just taken that step, and now PRDs are allowed to, the planning board is allowed to consider sustainability explicitly when reviewing planned residential development. However, there's still a whole slew of other development, subdivisions and regular teardowns and rebuilds that are not required to consider sustainability, and they're only held to the state building code. So there may be other incentives, other ways to incentivize our zoning bylaw so that other types of building and development proposals would be inclined to consider sustainability and maybe electrification more strongly. So that's, again, probably a longer glide path, something else to consider. We're going to be setting up some meetings and hopefully talking with the planning board about opportunities there. But I want to come back to that third option on the screen, the local resolution, and basically just make the case. Our ask tonight is whether or not the CAB would consider helping us out by basically proposing a local resolution to the select board for their forwarding or drafting a letter to send to the state legislature. And I think that Kate included draft language for your consideration in your packet. So that's a summary of the three things that we're hoping we can pursue as a community. And I'll pass it off to, I don't know, back to Kate, I guess, to just see if she has anything to add, and then over to Alice to talk a little bit more about home rule petition if there are questions.
I think that was great. Thanks, Gary. And yeah, in your packet, there was a draft of this local resolution that we worked on, Gary and Alice, Michael and Pam and I that are part of the group. I can share that on the screen if that's helpful too. But yeah, Alice, do you want to add anything?
Alice with us?
We cannot hear you.
Alice, you may be on mute.
Oh,
Try that. How's that?
yeah,
Good.
we hear you.
That's good.
Okay, sorry, I was using a different headset and it didn't seem to work. So the idea behind the local resolution is that if you have a dozen or 24 communities, each submitting to the legislature a resolution that calls on the legislature to do certain things, it has more weight than if a single community writes to a single legislature, a single legislator. It means that the conversation has to come to the legislative process and be heard. And so the more communities that join in, the bigger the impact would be on being heard. So it's, I put this in the category of low-hanging fruit. It's a good idea. It's non-binding, so it's easy for us to work on. The language has been modified based on comments from Mothers Out Front, added comments, our group of 5, plus feedback from RMI in the version that I think you may have seen in your packet. And so it's as much as anything else, it's a great engagement tool. It begins the process of conversations with our elected officials, with our select board, with our own boards and committees. And you guys are looked to as the leaders in climate action. You know, you're the big thinkers who are dealing with sustainability and climate issues as part of your role as a special municipal employee. And it seems pretty much in keeping with the goals of the sustainability plan that what you just finished, your climate action plan, to urge that the legacy laws that are on the books in the legislature be updated to what is required for us to meet the challenges of climate change. And that's basically what this says. We need a more progressive BBRC. We need to change the old laws so that they're reflective of the new conditions that we're living under.
Oh, whoa, I'm getting up.
I'm not quite sure what that was. So that's the background to this resolution, and it would be putting you guys in the front seat of helping to shepherd this through the process in Concord, so that the select board would be able to. They just sign on to this petition, basically, or resolution. They don't need to write a separate letter. We could have a signature page at the bottom for the members of the select board to sign on.
I think part of the thinking was try to also to get an engagement strategy and bring others into it in addition to CAB. I know Alice had some conversations with the mothers out front who made some really good additions on adding language to the resolution that deals with the workforce. And the themes that are running through it are the same themes that are running through pretty much everything we're touching, which is decarbonization strategies. And one of the things that the Department of Public Utilities has hired a consultant that created a charge for the investor-owned utilities to develop a very deep decarbonization strategy. So what it strikes me that what we have is all of these different pieces, these vectors that are coming together at different points, but at the nexus of it is the decarbonization. And And it seems to me that the success will be how we can get all of the different bodies, including CAB and others, to and the leadership in the town to follow along that same kind of coordinates. And then hopefully the magnetism of that will be enough to, persuade the legislature and the DPU and the BBRS and the Department of Labor and the audiences that were actually trying to influence adoption. So long-winded way of saying a lot of people engaged.
I see, Jane, I know you had your hand up, but I'd also, after you, I'd like to go to Warren because I know Warren wanted to comment as well.
Well, I don't want to steal anybody's comments. I actually have questions that would help me take this to the select board. We don't have to do this, this is a board meeting, so Warren should certainly have priority over me.
Okay, well, why don't we start with some feedback from CAB and then we can circle back to your questions and talk through this. So Warren, go ahead.
I think we should definitely do this. I think the resolution's good. My only question or suggestion is that in addition to the folks it's being directed to, I would think it should also go to the Speaker and the Senate President.
Any thoughts from Kate or Gary or Alice or others who worked on that in terms of that suggestion?
I don't know the protocol, but it sounds like a great suggestion. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
Jake?
Yes.
It's Ruthie.
Sorry, Ruthie. Thank you. Having
yeah,
trouble seeing
sure.
you.
Yeah, I think this is great. My question is, do we know what other communities are doing? Like, is there some kind of, and I'm sorry if I missed that if you said it, but like coordinated other towns put it all in together, or it doesn't matter, just, keep them going or whatever.
Kate or Alice, do you remember how many communities are in the RMI Accelerator group with us?
There are about 24.
Wow. Yeah.
And
So
are
there's
they all
about
doing this?
24 communities. And I think many of them are considering this, but I don't have a specific number as to how many are actually going to submit.
I'm just wondering, like, if it were coordinated.
It's coordinated in terms of the concept, the
Mhm.
purpose, and the language. So we're
Mhm.
all basing the language of what we're asking the legislature to do around some basic principles of what's wrong with the system now that keeps us from
Mhm.
meeting the state goals, the Global Warming Solutions Act, and our local mandates. So they're all very similar, but there'll be some tweaking. We added the Department of Labor and Workforce Development because for this to be able to move forward and be equitable to all, we need to make sure that we have a knowledgeable and trained workforce who can transition from a fossil fuel industry to a green economy.
Great.
And I would
support it.
I would just add too that it's one of the great things about being part of this RMI Accelerator program is not only do we have some kind of draft language for these kinds of things, and that's where we got a lot of this resolution language, is that we can also report back to that group that, here's the resolution that Concord sent, and the other communities will know, and we'll know who else is sending it. So there's coordination on that front too.
And I don't know, Alice.
Different approaches. Some communities are choosing to take the resolution to town meeting. I think that this does not need to go to town meeting as any other resolution would be, that the select board has the ability to review, question, edit, sign, and send without town meeting approval, because they're basically, it's non-binding. So it says it's goodwill. Here are some good things we should do to improve the legacy laws on the books.
We've heard back from some people and a little bit of feedback that, you look at the resolution, as Alice said, there's not a lot of heavy weight and teeth in it. It's non-binding, but it signals the direction that all of these cities and towns are going in. And it also tees up the next piece that is part of that whole strategic direction, which is the home rule petition that indeed does have teeth. I mean, if we could ever get it through. But so each of these pieces are not separate, but ultimately as a whole, maybe we can make a change. Maybe we can actually move that barge to the right or whatever. So they're not independent.
And to build on Michael's point, and I don't know whether, Alice, you've had this conversation with Laura or not, but I mean, Mothers Out Front is already, recommending suggestions to this language. I don't know, Laura, whether it's possible to coordinate through Mothers Out Front with other communities that might send a similar non-binding resolution, even if they're not participating in the Rocky Mountain Institute Accelerator Program.
You want me to comment on that, or?
I believe that's okay. It's okay with me. I'm not 100% sure on the protocol, but I think,
I'll keep it super short.
sure.
Mothers Out Front is a statewide organization, is going through its campaign development process right now. And everything coming out of RMI is on the table as a possible statewide coordinated campaign. We have 22 community chapters in Massachusetts, so it could be that 22 community chapters would all get on board with that. So there definitely could be some coordination through Mothers Out Front.
Thanks, Laura.
I guess not to beat a dead issue, but I just wonder, the timing, if one resolution comes in, they kind of set it aside, but if 20 come in, does it make more of an impact? I guess I'm wondering that.
Oh, that's an interesting idea.
I think it's an important consideration in terms of the timing. I guess it depends on how long you'd have to wait, right? And coordinating that number of communities that all may be taking a different approach or have different pathways to getting a resolution like that approved. So I think my concern would just be, if there is support, even just signaling back to RMI and maybe then having a conversation about waiting to have a group of communities that are all sort of ready around the same time. And maybe it's 10 at first, but then, 5 or 6 more come on board and it sort of builds from there. It might help start the momentum, right? So that might be one approach.
It's worth bringing back to RMI. We have a meeting on Thursday.
Okay.
Oh, tomorrow's Thursday. Oops. Okay, tomorrow. I'll put the sticky on my computer.
Any other comments or questions from CAB? And then, okay, John, go ahead.
I was wondering if it might be worth trying to expand the base of support through the regional planning agencies. So with MAPC, our regional planning agency, it has 101 member communities, and MAPC is very active on climate and energy. So perhaps through them, that might be the way to get more communities to basically do the same thing. Of course, there are all the other regional planning agencies too. I don't know where they stand on these issues. And then in terms of who to send it to, it seems like it would be good to also send it to some of the administrative agencies, particularly Energy and Environmental Affairs and Energy Resources, as well as the chair of the Board of Building Regulations and Standards, because I'm not sure the governor's office will pass it down.
Okay. Jane, did you want to jump in with your questions that may not have been answered already?
Sure. Ruthie asked my first question, which is who else is looking at this? Because in taking it to the select board, which I'm very happy to do, that's going to be the first question that's asked. And then I was thinking about, in addition to Mothers Out Front, Out Front's work, I'm on the energy committee of the Sierra Club in Massachusetts. There are a lot of organizations that have, the ability to expand or support multiple towns and communities. Towns and cities in Massachusetts. I don't know who the 24 are. So I don't know what the matchup is, but I also suspect that we wouldn't necessarily want to cap it at 24 RMI communities, but would be welcoming whatever communities in Concord, in Massachusetts, were interested. And then I would add to that, and I'm also happy to offer it to the Energy Committee of the Sierra Club. And then the other question I had was, in addition to Energy and Environmental Affairs and the Board of Standards, it might not be a bad idea to, I assume that Senator Barrett and Tammy both know about this. If not, reach out before this lands on their desks so that they can get ready to take credit for leading the charge. And then I would also suggest that letting Lori Trahan, letting our federal delegation know what's going on, because, we may do things locally that can capture the imaginations way beyond our borders. But I think that, I think this is great. I can't promise that there won't be tweaks or that people won't have their own opinions and ideas. I think you're right that it's pretty low hanging fruit in the sense that it's non-binding. So it's, why not? Why not indicate what we like? I assume that within Concord, the other committees that might be interested in this are also being reached out to. I'm thinking about, obviously, and Alice, I know that because you're the chair of the CMLP board, but and making sure that Concord as a whole knows about this. So it's not a surprise. It doesn't mean that we have to go to town meeting, and I'm not suggesting that. But I think the more support we generate, the better. And I assume that at the very least that they'll be reaching out to, there will be an outreach to CSAC, which is meeting tomorrow. So again, I think the more information that I can have before I put this on the agenda at the select board, or work with you to support putting it on the agenda at the select board, the more we have as to who else has a similar one, or even just has one, and where they're moving this. The other question I had about was some of the schools. I'm thinking about when we're talking about, for instance, the Department of Labor and Workforce Development, Minuteman Tech just immediately popped into my head as a great champion, but any of the technical high schools are places that draw from multiple towns and communities throughout Massachusetts, and are looking at this, at doing the high school education work with their students that would prepare them to go on to other workforce development. So with that, those are my 2 cents. But I think this is awesome, and it's good to move forward. It's good to have hope.
Thank you, Jane, for that feedback. Any responses from Kate, Alice, or Gary in terms of additional thoughts on Jane's comments? I think there are some good concerns and suggestions there. And I guess we have to decide how we want to move forward with addressing those and, kind of positioning this in the best way for the select board to hopefully, make this as much of a slam dunk as we can.
So I think those suggestions are all good. I took notes on them, and I think that if the CAB decides that they want to get behind this and be the champion that takes it to the select board, that you would be part of the engagement strategy, working with the community organizations that you are familiar with, maybe go out on the speaking tour with the rest of us or some number of us, because there's a lot of ground to cover. And as we move into a discussion about home rule petition, that grows. The outreach campaign required to get on the warrant is big, and then ensuring a vote at town meeting is even bigger. And it will require a lot of us getting out and doing some groundwork.
Yeah, I guess my thought is that I think all the stakeholder engagement is really important, especially for home rule petition. For the resolution, I wonder if we can do kind of a smaller prioritized subset of engagement where we're letting, you know, some other stakeholders know that CAB is moving this forward to the select board, and it'd be great if they could, you know, add their support. But, you know, move this along without, you know, taking many months to do a lot of stakeholder engagement just to bring the resolution, a non-binding resolution to the select board. I think it would be great to be able to move this along sooner rather than later, because it would really lay the groundwork for home rule petition and future bigger asks down the line.
I mean, isn't the ultimate goal to not even have to go to a home rule petition, that there'd be some action at the state level that would support this, and the town wouldn't have to go through that process, which I could see taking years, right? So this resolution can kick off that process.
So I would not expect immediate action once we submit a non-binding resolution. So the things that we want to have happen can happen in a number of different ways. I mean, the first is a notice of intent to our legislative body that we, the citizens, have a voice in this, and this is what we see is wrong with the system. We want it fixed. Then they have to decide what of those things they want to work on, and then they work through their own legislative process to change law, which is very long and coming. So the home rule petition says, good, I'm glad you're thinking about that. While you're thinking about it, there's a climate crisis, and we don't have time to wait for you to finish that process. We need some authority to be able to make decisions that are affecting our community, that helps us achieve our own local climate goals that we established through the sustainability goals, Article 51, Article 20, whatever, 6, whatever it was. And we need to move forward if we're going to achieve our own goals. And so they're parallel paths. And I think that, you know, if they see both coming at the legislature in a year, they start feeling like something's getting serious here. There are a lot of people telling us we got to start looking at what's wrong with our system and fix it so we can meet the challenge of climate change. So both of them will take a very long time. And as Michael said, there's, you know, the work at the Public Utilities Council, whatever they PUC, that's a very long process for the IOUs to develop a decarbonization plan for their companies, you know, Eversource and National Grid particularly. That'll be several years in the making, and then another 10 years in implementing. So realistically, that's got a 12 to 15 year timeline before we see action. For us to be able to make our own local decisions, we need the authority to do that now. That's my only thought about why we do multiple approaches.
John?
I wonder if we might put some, I'm a little worried about doing a home rule petition because it's such a big climb, especially if, I mean, there are two pieces to the resolution. So one is basically having the authority to ban, I'm using the word ban, but to prohibit new connections to gas infrastructure. So that largely affects new development, which is a very small, I don't know what our growth projections are, but I think it's a small portion of our overall greenhouse gas emissions. And so the bigger problems, the emissions from the existing building stock, and the other part of the resolution asks for authority to phase out existing infrastructure. To me, that's going to be a huge lift because that's going to involve the state utility laws and the DPU and all of that. And then wonder if there is a pathway to address the existing building stock that doesn't require going to the state for home rule legislation.
I wish there were an easy answer to that question. And that's the one we've been working on.
Right. I mean, in Cambridge, the path we're working on is amending our building energy use disclosure ordinance to add performance requirements for existing buildings that are subject to the ordinance, so it's the larger buildings, based on emissions, not on energy. I mean, if we, in Cambridge, it would be a city council action. It doesn't have to go to the AG. In Concord, if we did a bylaw, a non-zoning bylaw, I believe that still has to go to the AG for approval. So I don't know if that would complicate things, but.
If I can just add on that, I mean, disclosure is certainly one method of getting at retrofits, but I mean, really what, from a statewide perspective, I think what you're talking about with retrofits is incentives, because you can't force people to retrofit, you know, existing building. Well, I mean, you're probably more likely, to have success if you offer incentives to, you know, retrofit buildings in a way that, you know, achieves sustainable outcomes, and incentives usually require money. I mean, you know, there's some zoning incentives we're looking at. You know, one thing the town could offer is, you know, increasing density, increasing height. Those things often aren't consonant with our town character. So, you know, in Concord, we may not want to do that. May be more amenable to offering financial incentives that would get people to retrofit. And that usually you need a pot of money from the state. So ask from the state on the retrofit side could be, you know, financial resources.
Yeah, although I think we should have that discussion about how realistic we think incentives will how well they'll work to achieve the pace of emission reductions that we need. Because I would say in mass save communities, there are pretty good incentives, and uptake on those is difficult. And under our building energy use disclosure ordinance, we see some very modest improvements in energy use intensity for those buildings that have to report, because they only have to report, they don't have to actually do anything right now. And those incentives we have, which are pretty good, do not lead to huge reductions in emissions. And so that's why we're moving toward requirements where at 5-year increments, you have to meet these standards.
No doubt.
So what you're raising is, how do we get to scale? And I think that's a really challenging question to think about. As long as we rely on incentives and individual decision-making, we can never get to scale. But when you have the DPU ordering utilities to come up with a decarbonization plan, when they start implementing decarbonization, then we get to scale on all of our homes. If we haven't already done the retrofits, what will be going through those old gas lines won't be gas anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be geothermal, or I don't know what else is in the mix, and there are several pilots that just got funded in the last rate case that would allow those to go forward. One in Western Mass, and I think Cambridge is getting one, or Somerville. One on the eastern part of the state, one out in the middle western part of the state. And Eversource already hired a manager of the program to pilot the geo micro districts.
Yeah.
I mean, scale is always the great thing we need to achieve.
Are there any zoning disincentives that we can legally implement that are not necessarily fines, but are some sort of additional, just again, providing the signal that there's a cost in terms of carbon emissions to the gas infrastructure? Have we started looking at that? Is RMI looking at that at all? Or is that sort of down the road, I guess, within the zoning bucket?
They're not really looking at disincentives. They are looking at various types of incentives, zoning incentives that you can offer to, you know, speed up these things, including what, you know, I thought was sort of interesting, not only, you know, density or height or other sort of development centric metrics, but white glove treatment for permitting. You know, if you're willing to forego fossil fuel infrastructure in your development, you know, we'll guarantee you permit approval, you know, in 10 days or something like, sort of white glove service, if you will, for walking you through the permitting process. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And I don't know whether that puts an additional burden on our town staff, and I'm not sure they would be, capable of offering some of these incentives, but it's something to think about. But I have not seen them, RMI or other groups, actually trying to specifically penalize developers that are using natural gas. I don't know how that would go over.
I think it just all comes back to the inability to preempt the building code. So anything, whether it's a bylaw, whether it's a zoning, if it goes so far as to preempt the building code, then it's likely the Attorney General will strike it down no matter what form it is in. So that, I think, is where the RMI experts have been focusing on the things that they think are least likely to run into that issue.
And for existing homes, there's nothing the town can do relative to gas infrastructure and fees or charges. And I know that's not the focus for RMI.
Yeah. I mean, this RMI accelerator has been exclusively focused on new construction.
There are places that are doing very innovative financing. Things like Boulder has a local carbon tax. That would require us also to do home rule petition because it's instituting a new tax, but it's the idea that you have a carbon tax. That's also it's in the conference committee discussions now about whether we'll have a carbon tax in Concord in the final bill. And that's found to be the most significant driver so far in all the simulation models, that a carbon tax is the quickest way to bring down emissions.
I think if you could ask, maybe they've already considered this, but I think it would be helpful to ask RMI if having an emissions-based standard would avoid the conflict with the building code, because the building code's silent on emissions. It only talks about energy.
Yeah, but it's both the building code and the gas code, right? There's sort of two pillars we're trying to.
The energy code, right? But they're both silent on emissions.
Yeah.
I think Northampton either just passed and it has not heard from the AG, or it's going to be brought to their town meeting, an ordinance that would require new construction meet a certain LEED standard or LEED equivalent. You don't have to go through the full LEED process, but you have to submit all the documentation along with the project. So that
a lot of communities have that on the books already. Boston has it, Cambridge has it. I think that
cities can do that. So far, we would not be able to. I'm not quite sure why cities have authority and towns don't. I guess all of ours go through the AGs for approval, and there's thought that it may get struck down by the AG because of the preemption.
Yeah, it hasn't been challenged in the cities. That's why.
So it might be in the communities.
Pamela, I see has a hand up. Do you have a quick comment?
I was thinking that we are currently at the light board, we're undergoing electricity rate determinations. And it seems to me that one of the best incentives to have all electric new construction is to have a special light rate for them that really benefits them. It is all incentive, no punishment, and especially if you pair it with the kind of programs that we've already been talking about that give builders some professional help with the heat pump and the other things, and the loan incentives that are already available. That would be a really appealing package. Can we do that? that's the best power we've got is our ability to, as our municipal light plant and our ability to set the light fees to really incentivize all electric new construction.
Thanks, Pamela, for that comment.
Alice, could we do that this time?
Not in the current rate hearing, but it is,
You're on mute, Alice, can't hear you.
we would not be able to include that in the current rates that are being designed from the cost of service study, but it is, your comment is very similar to ones that I made to Dave last week.
Alice, you're on mute.
Still?
We actually,
I can
Alice
hear
is
you.
not on mute.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
we
can hear
can hear
her.
Alice.
Oh, I'm
Everyone else
sorry.
can
Yeah.
hear her, so.
I won't discount that as an option. I suggested there's something very similar to Dave a week ago. But it would not make it in the current rate structure that's being considered from the cost of service study. Rates that would go into effect January 1, 2021. So, yeah, takes a little more time.
I see that Brian, looks like Brian has his hand up as well.
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can.
Yes.
Great. So I just want to remind everyone about Durham, New Hampshire and their checklist. This is similar to the letter for the non-binding resolution. It's a very low-hanging fruit that we simply require a meeting where a developer needs to fill out a checklist, speak with someone and explain their project and have the opportunity to be informed about all electric options. But again, it's non-binding. It's kind of, it's very passive, but it requires no money, and it gets people thinking about these ideas and understanding the existing incentives that they may be able to take advantage of and take action on.
Thanks, Brian.
Yep.
So next steps, should we move forward then with a motion to support presenting this resolution to the select board with some of the accompanying materials that Jane and others have mentioned to the extent feasible to help support kind of making the case to the select board. But is CAB feeling ready that we, can basically say that we approve this resolution as currently structured and kind of starting that engagement and kind of following through this with the select board so that, understanding this is a non-binding resolution, understanding that this is a signal that we want to send, that ideally we would try and coordinate through RMI and outside of RMI with other communities to really amplify it. But recognizing we also, we need to try and move this forward and send that signal earlier versus later. So I guess I'd like to, can I go ahead and make that motion, or do I need someone to make that motion?
Someone else needs to make the motion.
Right.
I'll make
okay.
that motion.
Thank you, Ruthie. Anyone
Second it.
wants to second that?
I would, go ahead.
Courtney?
I will.
Excellent.
Okay. All right, so it sounds like we will go ahead and move forward with engaging with Jane and the select board and hopefully
We
Kate.
need to take a vote.
Oh, I'm sorry, of course, yes. So all those in favor, please raise your hand or use the raise hand button in Zoom. And it looks like we have unanimous support.
Excellent.
Thank you. Was there anything else that the RMI team wanted to discuss or review with CAB today?
I would just add that, as we indicated, this is the start of an engagement process with the town of Concord. And I think we probably will come back to you as we, develop more plans for, say, a home rule petition warrant article. So we may be looking for more support, but I think right now this was the ask, and thank you very much for supporting the resolution. I think this is the low-hanging fruit that gets us started, and you'll hear more from us as we move forward.
Terrific. Thank you, Gary.
Just to give you an idea of the timetable, the home rule petition warrant article would have to be ready by February. I believe the warrant will be open for the month of February or some period getting to the end of February. So we would have to have finalized the language of the home rule petition and begun to socialize it through town, and then hopefully have you guys take that on as well and bring that to the select board.
Okay.
And I asked a question following up on that. Do any of the folks who've been involved in the RMI collaborative know of towns that are definitely moving forward with a home rule petition?
Yeah, Arlington took it to town meeting on Monday night. I haven't heard what happened. Brookline's bringing it in the spring. Newton, Belmont, Lexington, and Concord are all doing something this year.
And again, it's the same strategy as the resolution. I mean, we're trying to get a coordinated activity of a number of communities indicating this is important to towns. And with, if the legislature is hit with, 12 towns asking for home rule petition, the idea is to send a signal, not only hopefully for us to get home rule petition, but I think that's a high bar, but at least to send a signal that, like, no, not just we're sending non-binding resolutions, we're serious. There's 12 or 15 or 20 communities that are serious. They want help with this. So it'll send a signal to the legislature. So we think it's really important to at least make the request for a home rule petition, even if we don't get it.
And it's also a way for us to keep the community engaged, all those who are working with us on Article 40 and Article 51, to know that we have not yet solved the climate crisis, and we have to do everything we can to do that. And so it keeps that in the forefront of our voting citizens' minds.
And it seems that, the process we've been following so far with the CAB is as this content is drafted, and we saw that with Article 40, and now we had in advance an opportunity to read the non-binding resolution. And my understanding is now there's work being done drafting the home rule petition so that it comes to the CAB in advance, and they can look at it, make any additions, and then ultimately, hopefully conclude as we've done tonight that it's a successful pathway forward. So I think the process we've been following has been quite good at not keeping things stalled for too long, and yet is improved along the way.
So in terms of prioritization, obviously there's this resolution and then the petition. And would you say the zoning piece is, kind of continues on after that? Because obviously we've got this February timeframe, which is going to be here before we know it, in terms of getting anything set and prepared to get in front of town meeting. But is there anything else that CAB could be doing or providing feedback on relative to the incentive structure? Like the Brian suggestion I thought is an interesting one, right? For additional opportunities to try and
Educate.
weave these different, and Pamela's as well, right? The suggestion around potential light plan actions, right? So if there's anything else that we can support on that front, whether it's just signaling that we support specific incentives or otherwise getting our feedback, please let us know as you guys continue to move ahead with this work. And I'm sure that the group would be happy to, to support that.
Great.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, just on zoning, I would say, we don't want to get out in front of the planning board, since they would be the ones moving zoning articles. So we had planned to set up a dialogue to socialize some of these concepts with them and find out where they're at. Having just moved the PRD warrant article this past year. They may not be eager to make new changes to PRD right away, but maybe they would consider other things. So I'd rather just have a conversation with them before we come back to you and ask about support there. So,
Okay.
great, appreciate the offer.
All right, well, should we, I guess we can move on to our next agenda item unless there's any other comments or questions. Okay.
Thanks.
So Kate, does that then, I think we're transitioning to you for the update on the Library Corporation, right?
Yeah, awesome. So we'll switch gears here. I'm going to share my screen because I have some slides. Just bear with me a second because I have a lot of windows. Here we go. Okay. Let me find it. All right. Can you see my slides? Awesome. All right, so I think I updated you all a couple times now that I am on a committee that has been brought together by the Library Corporation. Alice is on as well. And the Library Corporation has been working on this sustainability planning process. And so we're at the phase now where we're digging into actually making the plan. And so doing some of these listening sessions with groups around town that obviously have a vested interest in sustainability and have some expertise to bring. So I wanted to just take a few minutes to kind of give you a little update and then just open it up for your thoughts at this point in the process in terms of what you might want to see in the library's sustainability plan. So just kind of an overview of the planning process itself. The goals of this process with the Library Corporation is threefold. One, to create a sustainability plan, something that's clear and implementable. Another one of the core goals is to align this plan with the town's plan, so with our Sustainable Concord Climate Action Plan we just finished and the state's goals, and to engage the community along the way, which is why I'm bringing this to you guys today. Thought you might be curious to see who is on the sustainability committee. Sadly, I did not make the group photo, but it is a assortment of folks from the library, from town. We have a student from CCHS, and the group is being facilitated by some consultants from Greener U. And where we are in the planning process. So I mentioned this has been going on for a little bit since the summer, and a lot of the work's been done among that committee that you just saw and the Greener U team. But now we're really in this listening session and plan development phase. So really focusing in on what are the actual key actions in the plan. So there's a sustainability planning website that's a temporary site that's been set up for this process. I shared the link with you all earlier today, so I definitely encourage you to take a look at that. But it has a lot of good information as far as an update on what Greener U has done and a lot of the input that the community has already shared. There's also some surveys on there, so you can kind of participate and weigh in more detail if you want, but just kind of an overview, some of the things that they captured in the baseline, for the library itself is obviously greenhouse gas emissions being a big part of it. The baseline also looks at the building energy use, mobility, and really, like I said, the goal is that connections wherever possible to the town's plans. And there's some information on the library expansion since that's in the works, and a real focus on resources about climate change, that the library has been sharing and continues to share. So as we're thinking about the plan, the committee has settled on these two kind of core focus areas for what's going to go into this plan for the library. One is built environment and operations. So that's, the building itself, renovations, and just the daily operation of the building. And the other is education and outreach. So obviously the library plays a really unique role in the community. And so this is a core piece of the plan, looking at the library's programming and resources, events, communication about climate in the community and in the library itself. So all the actions that are going to be in this plan are going to fall into these two focus areas. So these are some of the questions that I just wanted to open up for any thoughts that you have now. Certainly you can follow up as well, but wanted to get your thoughts on, given those two focus areas, are there things that you really want to see in this library's plan? Are there areas of the Sustainable Concord plan that we just finished that you think should really be connected to the library's planning, or you'd really like to see those connections made? And just kind of blue sky, like how could the library show leadership in their sustainability planning process? So those are the things I was hoping to get your thoughts on. So I will just open it up and feel free to answer me or all of those questions, whatever comes to mind, and I will take some notes.
Well, I could start us off here a little bit because I was engaged with the library early on, and I think it's fabulous. And I'm wondering that how the library might be a lead by example. So here we have this major renovation going on. We've been talking about net zero. We've been talking about renewable energy. How can the library manifest that by the construction that they're currently doing? So people can see that what we are talking about and trying to practice is actually being done by the library, which can serve as a hub, right, for all the ideas and innovation that we've been talking about, as well as the imperatives that we speak to in the climate plan itself.
Thanks, Michael.
I would echo Michael's points. I think it's a great opportunity to bring a lot of the elements of the plan to life with respect to, existing buildings and how do you try and transform existing buildings to be more sustainable and to align with the climate goals that we have. Ideally you could provide, you could almost have like tours, right? If you're able to show specific elements of, whether it's air source heat pumps or any of the other things that were done as part of the renovation or as part of the expansion to support the sustainability effort, I think it would be a great way to tie that together with the overall town plans and tie in education to that. So I'd love to see that for sure. And I don't know if other folks had a chance to respond to the survey, but I took some time to do that. I know Kate had sent an email around, and I'm sure they'd love to hear additional feedback. And from if you have some time to go in and do that, or share with other folks across the community to make sure that they hear that feedback from other folks.
Thanks, Jake.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm just joining into the choir here or not, but I think, any type of pilot, if they're so willing to take on some of those things to show how some of these strategies can be employed, even if it's on a small or demonstration scale. And then when you were talking, Jake, about highlighting, I'm thinking of the board at the high school that shows all of the lead elements that went into the design of that building. I don't know if there's an analogous board that could be made, or something like it that shows how the library renovation is in line with the climate action plan. Might be a different take on that, but I think education is probably one of the biggest components. Yeah.
Thanks.
Warren?
Yeah, I have two suggestions in terms of programming. because of the pandemic, I've been, instead of going to the library, taking out a lot more books online. And because of that, I would just roughly saying, I've reduced my driving by more than 100 miles by the number of times I didn't go to the library, although I miss going there. But it's still the case that it's less convenient for people to find the books they want online than it is in the library, less convenient to browse. I wonder about additional efforts to make it easier for people to get the books they want online, because the current process is somewhat cumbersome. And then the second thing, the library has very interestingly started to loan out stuff to people rather than books, and be a center for loaning devices and equipment. And I wonder about expanding that in a way that really emphasizes sustainability, either by having things that allow people to do things at home that reduce their environmental impact by tools, things like being able to measure your electricity use of devices, things like that, or focusing on items that there's a significant environmental impact in their production, and by loaning it out, you're discouraging people from buying something that has a significant environmental impact.
Jake?
Yes, Ruthie, and then John.
So I was just wanted to ask, were you looking for like, or was the library looking for very specific things about their operations? Like,
Really wide open. If you have something
right.
specific, feel free.
Yeah, so occupancy sensors for the lights and demand control ventilation. So, or demand control heating and cooling, so that areas aren't heated and cooled 100% of the time at the same temperature, but they respond to, you know, either infrared when people come in, or CO2 or movement, that kind of thing.
Great, thanks.
John?
Yeah, I was wondering if there's a way for the library to curate some information about climate change, or more, not so much about the scary stuff about climate change, but more about the positive vision of, you know, converting to a renewable-based life, in terms of, you know, the economic benefits, the health benefits, and have that be designed more for, not so much for the converted choir, but more for the rest of the people we need to reach to be engaged in all of this. So basically curate information that creates a positive vision about transforming to where we need to get, that will draw in people, and whether that's through book discussions, or, you know, curating some videos that are along those themes. I don't know, you know, how best it should be done, but something in that direction would be useful.
Yeah, that's great, thanks.
And one other thing along the lines the library could do would be to set up a resource area with books and articles and materials related to sustainability. There's a lot of stuff in the library already, but it's, you know, because of the nature of the library cataloging system, it's spread through many different sections of the stacks, and creating some attractive place where people could browse and learn about sustainability options for their own homes and their own lives.
Great. Anybody else? These are
I do see there that I believe Laura and Pamela have raised their hands. So I don't, if there aren't any other cab comments at this point.
Sorry.
Ruthie has another comment, and then it looks
Sorry.
like Brian does as well. So then maybe we could move to public comment either after that, or we can wait until the public comment period. So we'll see
Sorry,
how the
just wanted to-
discussion goes. Sorry, Ruthie, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to put in a comment about green cleaning. There's a lot of carpets there, and there's great ways to do green cleaning. And when they're thinking about sort of new materials for the floors, try to think about how we can do it that would use less energy to clean.
You know, I was just, can we add another comment, Jake? Do you have time?
Michael,
for this?
can we have Brian chime in first? I
Yes.
believe he had a comment, and then Michael, you can go.
Oh, just very quick.
Okay.
I was going to echo Warren's comments on thinking about the totality of the system and the climate impact of the system. And, you know, I think at the extreme, the lowest carbon impact might be, and I'm making stuff up, is you have a book fulfillment center that has electric vehicles that drop books off at your house. Now, I don't think that's inconsistent at all with the library as a meeting place and many other functions it serves, but I think just thinking about the end-to-end impact of the whole operation is an important thing to keep in mind, that's all.
Michael, go ahead.
Yeah, I was thinking what Warren said made me speculate that while we have a person who's a reference librarian, right? And you go to him or her for deep information, and she or he guides you. How would the library be if it acted as a hub where the citizenry would go to that place in order to subscribe to the products, the services, the offerings that the town has, decipher some of the efforts that the CMLP has, but sometimes it's really difficult to get your arms around. What does that have to do with me, and who do I go and talk to get things done? Sort of like a concierge ability to be a place for selling products and services, for subscribing to, maybe it's new rates, or maybe it's more renewable energy, or how in the world do I get somebody to come to my house to look at electrification? Sort of a clearinghouse, because people see the library as that kind of gathering place, and it could be transitioned from just education to an innovation center, right? Where all the things that we talk about, there's an actionable ability for a citizen to come in and say, I need some help. Can you direct me in this direction or that direction? And what should I buy? Things like that. Anyway, that just made me think of this when Warren said that.
Heat pump coach.
Thanks.
Kate, do you want to get some feedback from
Yes,
others out front
please.
as well? Okay.
Yeah, that'd be great. Anyone else who has feedback, feel free.
Okay, I think Pamela's been waiting the longest, and then I think Laura and Gilda as well. So whoever wants to jump in.
I just wanted to suggest that whenever we have new construction that we have any control over, it ought to be net zero. And that we're having, is the library planning to have, the main branch extension be heat pump and transition and transfer the energy of the building to electric? And is there room to put solar on top?
They are planning to do heat pumps and it to be all electric. And there's a bunch of information, Pamela, about the expansion on the library's sustainability planning sites. I can send that link to you because I know I sent it to the group, but I can send it to you too.
Laura?
My comment's very quick. I just wanted to offer a concrete example of what Warren was suggesting, this item lending program. Brookline Their libraries lend out induction burners to residents. So if somebody's considering a transition to an electric stove, they can rent out a burner, make sure their pans work. And Mothers Out Front has been a part, the Brookline team has been a partner in getting people to actually take advantage of that program. So that's an example of a partnership that might be of interest.
That's cool. Thanks.
Thanks. Gilda?
I really like I like all of these ideas, but when I think of them coming together, like if there was a concierge service that was kind of an arm of CMLP, or the hub where people could learn about the latest rebates and what they should do at their home, and etc. But also, if it was a place where you could find out what the status was of where we were as a town, like what kind of progress we've made, and you know, what else we need to do, that we have 25% homes that are electric, but we need 50 in the next 5 years. I mean, like a museum and also a concierge, or it exhibits and also a concierge, as well as being a model. That's very exciting.
Thanks. Awesome.
All right.
This was really helpful. I really appreciate all the input, and I'll pass this along to the committee, and I'll follow up with you guys, keep you posted on the planning process.
Great, thanks, Kate. All right, I think we are ready to move on to any additional public comments. I know we've sort of been integrating them throughout here, but anyone else have additional? Oh, sorry, Brian.
One point of order. I don't think we actually voted on the minutes. I think we seconded that we would, but I'm looking through the notes and I don't think we actually voted on them.
Sorry about that. I am having a problem with getting votes, so my apologies. Let us vote on approving the minutes. All those in favor? All right, minutes are approved. Thank you, Brian.
Sure thing.
Michael, did you have another comment, or were you just putting your hand down? Okay. Andy, do you have a comment?
Comment.
Okay. All right. I believe, I don't know, did we lose Kate? No, she's right there. All right, I think we're ready to adjourn. So thank you all for your input tonight. We'll be circling back next month, as I said, with the light plants, which will be really exciting. Looking forward to that. And we'll be following up on the resolution and the next steps on that, and make sure that that keeps moving. And obviously, it sounds like we're going to be continuing to engage with the RMI team on the home rule petition and other activities around that. So a lot coming down the pike there. And then just as a reminder, if folks are able to and can, have some time and want to kind of look into other committees that you may be interested in. I know some folks signed up for doing that and staying in touch with some of the other communities in town, but just encourage you to try and stay connected where you can. And anyway, I hope you have a great rest of your night, guys. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Jake.
guys.
Do we have to vote to adjourn?
Happy.
Okay, we have to vote to adjourn.
We have to vote to
We have to
adjourn.
vote on everything. Okay, so we're voting to
Awesome.
adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to
Second.
adjourn. I can't make the motion to adjourn. Someone want to
Yes,
make a
sir.
motion to adjourn?
I make the motion to adjourn.
All
I
right, I'll get
second.
this right the next time. Sorry, y'all.
It's,
We got to vote.
We voted. We voted.
we voted. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Thanksgiving. Bye.
Oh yeah, happy Thanksgiving.
Oh, indeed.